The story begins with Roy Coleman driving his rig through the winding back roads of rural Georgia. It's late afternoon, and the sun is beginning to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the dense forests and fields that line the narrow road. Roy is on his way to deliver a load of agricultural supplies to a farm in a remote part of the state, navigating the unfamiliar terrain with the help of an old worn map. As he drives, Roy realizes he's taken a wrong turn somewhere. The road he's on is getting narrower, the trees closing in around him, and there's no sign of the landmarks he was told to look for. The GPS on his phone has lost signal, and the radio is only picking up static. He's alone, with only the hum of the engine and the rustling of the wind through the trees to keep him company. The road ahead forks suddenly, and Roy is faced with a choice: turn back and try to retrace his route, or take the left fork, which looks like it might lead him back to the main road. The left fork seems to be the better option, and Roy turns onto it, the truck's tires crunching on the gravel as he drives deeper into the unknown. As the sun sets and dusk settles over the landscape, Roy notices something strange. The road ahead leads to a crossroads, a place where two roads intersect, forming a perfect cross in the middle of the woods. A weathered wooden signpost stands at the center, its lettering faded and unreadable. The air around the crossroads feels different, heavier, as if the very atmosphere is charged with something unseen. Roy pulls the truck to a stop, the engine idling as he tries to get his bearings. The crossroads are eerily silent, the only sound the distant cry of a whip-poor-will. The trees around the intersection seem to lean in, their branches casting twisted shadows across the ground. A sense of unease settles over Roy, and he can't shake the feeling that he's not alone. As Roy contemplates his next move, a figure appears at the edge of the woods. A man, older and dressed in worn, dusty clothes, with a wide-brimmed hat pulled low over his face. He walks slowly toward the truck, his movements deliberate and unhurried, as if he's been expecting Roy. Roy rolls down the window and greets the man cautiously. The stranger introduces himself as Ezekiel, a local who knows these parts well. He asks Roy what brings him to the crossroads, his tone polite but carrying an undercurrent of something darker. Roy explains that he's lost and looking for the main road. Ezekiel nods slowly, his eyes narrowing as he studies Roy. He warns Roy that the crossroads are no place for a man to linger, especially after dark. He tells Roy of the old legends, the stories of deals made with dark forces, of souls lost and never found, and of the curse that haunts anyone who dares to stop at this forsaken place. Roy, though skeptical, feels a shiver of fear run down his spine. He's heard similar stories before, tales of crossroads demons and cursed bargains, but he's never put much stock in them. Still, something about Ezekiel's warning rings true, and Roy decides it's best to leave as quickly as possible. But as he tries to start the truck, the engine sputters and dies, leaving him stranded. Roy tries again, but the engine refuses to turn over, the dashboard lights flickering ominously. The air grows colder, and the shadows around the crossroads deepen, the trees seeming to close in even further. Ezekiel watches silently as Roy struggles with the truck, his expression unreadable. He then tells Roy that the crossroads have chosen him, and that there's no escaping the fate that awaits him here. He speaks of the dark forces that dwell in this place, of the souls that have been claimed over the centuries, and of the one way Roy might save himself, by making a deal with the entity that rules the crossroads. Desperate and afraid, Roy is reluctant to believe in such things, but the oppressive atmosphere and the growing sense of dread leave him with little choice. He asks Ezekiel what he must do, and Ezekiel tells him to wait until nightfall, when the entity will reveal itself. As darkness falls, the atmosphere at the crossroads becomes almost unbearable. The air is thick with the scent of damp earth and decay, and the trees seem to whisper in the wind, their branches creaking and groaning like ancient bones. The moon rises, casting an eerie, pale light over the intersection, and Roy feels a chill that reaches down to his very soul. Ezekiel remains by Roy's side, silent and watchful, as the temperature drops further and the night deepens. The crossroads are now completely enveloped in darkness, the only light coming from the faint glow of the moon and the distant stars. Suddenly the wind picks up, whipping through the trees and rattling the branches. The shadows around the crossroads begin to move, coalescing into a single, towering figure that seems to emerge from the very ground itself. The entity is dark and formless, its presence filling the air with a sense of malevolence and power. Its eyes glow with an otherworldly light, and its voice is a low, rumbling growl that echoes through the night. The entity speaks to Roy, offering him a choice, his soul in exchange for whatever he desires, or his life if he refuses. The Crossroads demon tempts him with promises of wealth, power, and freedom from the burdens of the world, but Roy knows that these are hollow promises, traps designed to ensnare the unwary. Roy's mind races as he searches for a way out, but the entity's presence is overwhelming, its power suffocating. He knows he can't bargain with a force like this, and that there's no way to escape the Crossroads curse without sacrificing something of great value. Ezekiel stands silently by, his expression unreadable, as Roy faces the entity. Roy realizes that Ezekiel is more than just a local. He's a part of this place, a guardian, or perhaps even a servant of the dark forces that dwell here. In a final, desperate act, Roy makes a decision. He tells the entity that he desires nothing from it, that he values his soul and his freedom too much to make a deal with darkness. The entity's eyes flare with anger, and the air around Roy grows colder still, the shadows pressing in on him from all sides. But then, just as it seems the entity will claim him, Roy pulls a small silver cross from his pocket, a keepsake from his late wife. He holds it out toward the entity, his hand trembling but his resolve firm. The cross seems to glow with a faint light, and the entity recoils, its form flickering and wavering as if in pain. The wind howls through the Crossroads and the shadows writhe and twist, but the entity is forced to retreat, its power waning in the face of Roy's defiance. With a final, deafening roar, the entity dissolves into the darkness, leaving the Crossroads eerily silent once more. As the first light of dawn begins to break over the horizon, the oppressive atmosphere at the Crossroads lifts, the air growing warmer and lighter. The trees no longer seem so menacing, and the shadows recede, leaving the intersection bathed in the soft glow of morning. Ezekiel turns to Roy, his expression one of quiet respect. He tells Roy that he did what few have managed, to stand up to the darkness and refuse its temptations. Roy, exhausted and shaken, nods in acknowledgement, his mind still reeling from the events of the night. The truck's engine roars to life on the first try, as if the curse that had held it in place has been lifted. Roy climbs back into the cab, ready to leave the Crossroads behind forever. As he pulls away, he glances in the rearview mirror, but Ezekiel is gone, leaving only the empty intersection behind. The road ahead is clear, the morning sun shining brightly over the Georgia landscape. Roy drives on, the weight of the night's events heavy on his mind, but he knows he's been given a second chance. He survived the Crossroads, escaping the fate that had claimed so many others. The story ends with Roy reaching the main road, the open highway stretching out before him. He drives into the rising sun, leaving the cursed Crossroads far behind. But the memory of the encounter lingers, a reminder of the dark forces that dwell in the hidden corners of the world. As Roy continues his journey, he resolves to never take another wrong turn, knowing that the price of curiosity and temptation can be far greater than anyone can imagine.